Hello, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros, the fantasy football podcast. This is the Week 13 running back ranks episode, the Thanksgiving Day week, the Black Friday, whatever it is, just Sunday. It's just Week 13. It's pre-playoffs. The playoffs are almost here. We got to win. Every question I see is, this is a must-win. So this is a must-watch show. We've got Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice. I'm Chris Welsh, and we're going to be breaking down all of the Week 13 running backs. Fitzy, however will you sort out the mess when injuries are bringing players back, a couple that are going to be out? There's some potential waiver wire running backs that might have some functioning here. And on top of it, Fitz, there are like 3 different days of games between Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And Monday. So there are 4. So it is no easy task navigating the running back ranks this week.
Fantasy managers have to keep their head on a swivel this week and keep checking, the Fantasy Pros news desk for the latest updates, because there are going to be, you might want to play Bucky Irving, but you might not be 100% sure he's coming back. Now, we think he's coming back. He's been practicing for a couple of weeks. It seems like this is going to be the week back, but you don't want to get the rug pulled out from under you and, maybe your next best option was playing on Thursday and you bypass that. So try to stay on top of things as best you can, I guess, is the advice.
And we will try to help. We're going to talk about Bucky Irving. Erickson, how are we still holding up? Erickson and I are in Sitgate here, making it through for this week. Are you ready for running backs?
Let's do it. Let's rock.
All right, let's do it. Nothing else. All right. If you guys want to follow along, fantasypros.com/rankings. You can follow along all week long up until kickoff, as the rankings will continuously change. But if you want, knowing that there might be a little bit of difference in what we talk about when we're doing this versus where you're at, fantasypros.com/rankings to follow it all. Big board time for the running backs. Week 13, top 12. Jahmyr Gibbs comes in at number 1, followed by Christian McCaffrey, who, by the way, has got Cleveland, the worst, a 1-star matchup, and he's number 2 this week. Jonathan Taylor, Devon Etienne, Bijan Robinson, and Derrick Henry. That is your top 6. 7 through 12, James Cook, Chase Brown, Saquon Barkley, TreVeyon Henderson, Kyren Williams, and Ashton Jeanty. So what questions can we possibly pop up when we are getting into this this running back 1 range? Are there really questions to be had? How about Saquon Barkley and the overall production? Bad week last week, Fumble City. Great matchup this week. It's a 4-star matchup according to Fantasy Pros. He's got the Bears. He comes in at number 9. You guys are close in proximity to the rank. Fitzy, you got him at 9. Erickson, you got him at 10. Fitzy, why don't you talk to us about Saquon Barkley? Because I feel like he has been teetering into this range where it's like, maybe he's not a must start anymore. If this were the Browns, by the way, if he had the Christian McCaffrey matchup, kind of think Saquon would be outside the top 12 and maybe even teetering into the 15s where people might consider benching him. The matchup is really hard to not play him, though. Yeah,
in guillotine leagues, maybe you could think about not starting him when it's down to just a few teams left and everyone's team is an all-star team. So I want to rank Barkley higher than low-end running back 1 against the Bears defense that was missing all of its starting linebackers last week, all of them, and gave up 227 yards from scrimmage to the Pittsburgh running back combo of Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell. But, man, the Eagles' running game is just not working. And having Lane Johnson hurt doesn't help at all. Saquon is averaging 3.7 yards per carry this season, just 2.8 yards per carry over his last 3 games. That did include some tough matchups against the Packers and Lions, but last week Saquon had 10 carries for 22 yards against the Cowboys, whose run defense is better since the Quinshon Williams deal, but come on. So, yeah, it hasn't been great for Barkley. At least they're getting him a little bit involved as a pass catcher. But I just don't know if there's top 5 upside here.
Erickson, there's a little bit, you're kind of the anti-Barkley guy here, but there's that little narrative you can paint if you would like that, you come off of this really bad game, inefficient fumble, that you want to come out against a team that gave up that amount of yards and you want to bury them with Saquon. You want Saquon to make a statement coming off of that. That's a narrative that you can paint. Unfortunately, it really hasn't been something we've seen a lot out of Saquon. So you've got him at 10, you got him in the same range. What's your vibe around Saquon for this week?
He's a volume play, right? Gets a lot of carries. That's kind of it. And that's why I have him as a low-end RB1. He's had good matchups before, and he hasn't delivered top 5 type of upside because that's just not him this year. Like last year was a really special season for Saquon Barkley. And this is just a reminder that it's really hard to repeat these super special seasons year to year, especially when you're coming off the amount of volume that Barkley had last season. So look, you're starting him, still top 10 running back. Again, matchup is divine against the Bears, but is he going to win you your week? I think the sample size of this year says no. He's going to be solid, maybe 15, 20 points. Good effort, but not the same guys last year as a rusher.
Running back ones, when we're talking about these are kind of vibe checks, because they are RB1. So it's like, what is the general consensus around? The other one we'll talk about is TreVeyon Henderson. So Ramondre came back. The fear was instilled in some of us, and it was kind of all for naught. We saw volume. I think it was 21 touches overall for TreVeyon. Looked good. Ramondre got some, snap usage. I think it was like half of what TreVeyon did, and he was out there. This matchup this week is phenomenal against the Giants. The Giants are a team that you want to play against. Your running back just had volume when the other guy came back. All systems seem to be really positive in a go. Though to me, there's like a little Mike Vrabel on my shoulder that's just like, Ramondre, like it's going to happen. Like I feel like it can go out there, but it was kind of killed for this past week. So you guys both have him, TreVeyon, better than the RB10 ECR. Erickson, why don't we start with you? What's your overall, it's the vibe check again around TreVeyon for this week.
So TreVeyon got compared to a certain running back that just played the New York Giants coming out of Ohio State. His name is Jahmyr Gibbs. And he's still running for more yards against the New York Giants. Who's got more juice? Saquon Barkley or TreVeyon Henderson?
Yeah,
TreVeyon Henderson. That's why I'm starting him over Saquon.
I love it. Fitzy, what do you think? TreVeyon Henderson, are you the same? Are you going to start TreVeyon over Barkley?
Oh, I have hemmed and hawed about this. They're next to each other in my rankings. Right now, I've got Barkley ranked higher because if we know that maybe even just one of the Bears missing linebackers is coming back this week, that'll be enough for me to push Barkley below TreVeyon Henderson. The only thing is that I think Ramondre Stevenson could eat into Henderson's workload more than anyone is going to eat into Barkley's workload. And now we didn't really see Henderson take a big bite out of it last week, but maybe it was just kind of a ramp-up game for Stevenson. I don't want to freak out the TreVeyon Henderson investors. There's no way we're going back to the old arrangement where it's like Ramondre playing ahead of TreVeyon Henderson, but it's possible he could be a stone in your shoe if you have TreVeyon Henderson.
The stone in the shoe is a perfect example. That is exactly what Ramondre is for sure. All right. Those are again, a couple vibe check on the RB1. So let's go to RB2s where there are some bigger questions. The big board is 13 through 24. It starts with Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, Rico Dowdle, Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, Jaylen Warren. At 19 is RJ Harvey, Bucky Irving, Quinshon Judkins, Kareem Hunt, Ken Walker, and Woody Marks. How about Travis Etienne? There was so much discussion of Tootin versus Etienne and non-contact jerseys and who's practicing all week long. And then it ended up being a lot of Travis Etienne. Some of that may have been to Tootin's health as well, especially on the snap counts. He comes in as ECR 14. He has the best matchup grade. It is a 5-star matchup rating, according to Fantasy Pros. No one else in this range has that. And Fitzy, you've got him at 12. Erickson, you've got him at 16. So you guys a little bit on opposite ends between RB1 and RB2. So Fitzy, why don't you kick off the positive front here? You've got him as a starter. So what do you think about Etienne this week?
Well, you mentioned how good the matchup is. He gets the Titans, who are giving up the, I think, 6th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Etienne has just been really good for the entire month of November. He's RB6 in half-point PPR fantasy points per game for the month. I think the concern with Etienne earlier this year was that his value was too touchdown dependent. And Etienne has scored 4 touchdowns in November, but Travis Etienne is also averaging 20.5 touches and 95.3 scrimmage yards per game this month. So we're getting the volume. We love the matchup. And, even though there was a little bit of a Bashal Tootin uprising a couple of weeks ago, I think we have seen now that Travis Etienne is the lead running back in Jacksonville.
Erickson, are you no longer tooting the horn, and are you on the Travis Etienne train?
Not entirely getting off the Tootin tugboat horn, because last week was really weird, right? Both guys were dealing with injuries. One guy's in the non-contact jersey. The other guy's not. Who's healthy, who's not. So I kind of felt like I was a little bit bamboozled, where Tootin was taking over the backfield 2 weeks ago, and then they go right back to Etienne. So are we so like 100% confident? Like, nope, it's going to be Etienne no matter what. Like, I'm just pressing pause a little bit there. They like to use both backs. They like to use Toot, especially around the goal line. So, look, I think that Etienne's, again, I have him 15, so you're still starting him confidently. I do get some reservations with this Jaguars team playing on the road in a divisional game. Like, talking about, like, who's going to lay an egg this week? The Jacksonville, would anyone be surprised if they go to Tennessee and Trevor Lawrence craps the bed? Like, that's kind of like where I'm like, okay, let's not get over our skis here, because no team plays more volatile than the Jaguars week to week. Like, I never bet on their games because I don't know what team's going to show up. So just the optics of going on the road against a Titans team that's played better. Cam Ward has been playing much better over the last couple weeks. So that's the only reason I'm not as high as ECR, but still a very strong start. But it would not surprise me if Tootin get another week removed from the ankle injury if he does get a little bit more run.
This is one that I was a little surprised about. It's the RJ Harvey ranking. He comes in as the 19th running back on ECR, and both of you are lower than consensus on him. So that one kind of took me back. Washington, this is a solid matchup. Obviously, like, the passing side of the game is a real big benefit, but this team is, they're going to run the ball. Fitzy at 21, Erickson at 22. Erickson, why don't you kick it off? Why not so high on RJ Harvey this week?
It's not that I'm not high. I mean, still have him ranked as a top 24 running back. Just a matter of, okay, how are the Broncos going to attack this Commanders defense? We know that you can throw really easily on the Commanders. Harvey is the starter with J.K. Dobbins out, and we saw him have pretty encouraging usage, 61% of the snaps in the first game play without J.K. Dobbins, but we know that Sean Payton likes to use multiple backs. Even in that game, Julian McLaughlin scored a rushing touchdown. Now, they didn't play that many snaps, him and Tyler Bidet, so I do believe that it's going to be Harvey as the main guy. So it's really just, I just like a couple other guys a little bit more than him. Maybe Rico Dowdle is a player that I could potentially move down a little bit more behind RJ Harvey, because he's kind of fallen off pretty substantially over the last couple of games. They're using Chuba Hubbard a little bit more, which I don't like, and the Panthers offense is just, I think, taking a step back a little bit. So maybe I can move him up a little bit there, but still only one game sample size of Harvey kind of being the guy, and it was, underwhelming in a tougher matchup.
Fitzy, same thing. I definitely underwhelming, I agree, but kind of the dog in town, and it's just a bad overall defense. I do think the being able to attack them in the passing game is like a pretty solid narrative, but I think he's also going to be involved in the receiving game. So why do you hate RJ Harvey? Even though you're one spot higher than Erickson, why do you hate him?
Yeah, so when we last saw the Broncos before their Week 12 bye, Harvey did have a season high 61% snap share against the Chiefs. Didn't really work out. He had 11 carries for 30 yards, 3 catches for 20 yards. Just sort of a tough matchup, but now much better matchup against the Commanders. They're allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. Commanders have given up the 5th most rushing yards, the 11th most receiving yards to running backs. But Erickson sort of said it. Sean Payton is he's not a one running back kind of guy. So 61% for a snap share is probably the ceiling or close to it for RJ Harvey. We will see Julian McLaughlin. We will see Tyler Bidet. That's just kind of it. And maybe they do let Bo Nix try to get right in this matchup against the worst pass defense in the league and go with a throw heavy approach.
All right, let's go to our injured running back section of the RB2s, and let's start with Bucky Irving, who comes in with an ECR of 21. You guys are both ranking him higher, so this is, I assume, just the assumption that he is healthy. I'm guessing there's a little bit of like I don't want to call it a 3-headed monster, but the knowledge that like Bucky Irving is not going to be unleashed here, because you guys do have him ranked higher than ECR, but it's respectively like high teens. Fitzy at 18, Erickson at 17. So Fitzy, why don't you just kick us off here with your thoughts on Bucky Irving's ability to play this week and what you think the volume is going to be as a late teens ranked running back?
I think he's a terrific player. I want to be above consensus on him. The Cardinals are a pretty good matchup. Buccaneers have a very good offensive line. I know the quarterback situation maybe with Teddy Bridgewater diminishes the touchdown outlook a little bit, but it also might mean that the Buccaneers run the offense through their running backs more than they normally would. So it's possible this is a ramp-up week for Bucky Irving, and he's capped at 10 to 12 touches, in which case maybe a mid-range RB2 ranking is a little aggressive for him. But I mean, like, it's not on the merits. Bucky Irving is just way better than Rachaad White. And I know a lot of people are falling head over heels for Sean Tucker. Bucky Irving's way better than Sean Tucker too. So if he's healthy enough to carry the load, he's going to carry a heavy load unless they want to be really conservative with him. But I don't know if the Buccaneers really have the luxury of being conservative since they're fighting for their playoff lives.
Erickson, same question on Bucky. I'd assume the snaps should be a little bit smaller, but the percentage of the snaps that he's out there, like, he should touch the ball. Like, I would imagine you wouldn't even be surprised if he got like 15, 16 touches in this game, even if the snap count is low. And that probably has to be built in a little bit to like the range of how you have him ranked.
I think the upside is just too great to try to leave him on your bench. Would anybody be surprised against the Arizona Cardinals? Walter Nolan just got hurt again. If he's a top 5 running back, if he gets the work. So I'm not going to pretend I have a crystal ball and I know exactly how the Buccaneers are going to deploy Bucky Irving. But what I do know, based on what Todd Bowles has talked about, is they're going to ride the hot hand. So if Bucky Irving plays, starts cooking, that boy's going to eat. Like, I feel very confident. So he is a swing for the fences type of play. Again, playing anybody off an injury is always going to carry a significant risk. You get the Ricky Pearsall thing where you play him, literally does nothing. So that's something that you need to evaluate on your own roster. And you say, can I stomach, oh my God, it was a ramp up period and they gave him the Chris Godwin treatment and he was a total bust. But on the flip side of the coin, he can be a top 5 running back this week. And considering you've made it this far without using Bucky Irving, you may have some other options. I think it's hard pressed to find a better upside option this week than Bucky Irving on your roster. Do you want to start Bucky Irving or Justin Jefferson?
I mean, I know what you're saying, but like when you say it, immediately I want to say Justin Jefferson.
No, you don't. Because one guy has a top 5 ceiling and one guy doesn't.
I know. I'm just saying, like, my instant reaction was like, well, Jefferson. But to your point, Jefferson with the backup quarterback, I know it is Bucky. But I wanted to say Jefferson.
Chase that
makes
ceiling.
me mad.
Go for it.
All right. The other one, Quinshon Judkins got banged up in this last game. We saw a bit of Samson. He's ECR 21. It's a favorable matchup against the 49ers, but I think there's a injury tag that has maybe his rank being a little bit timid. And you guys are on opposite ends here a bit. Fitzy, you're like one spot lower than consensus. Erickson, you're quite a few spots higher than consensus. So Erickson, why don't you kick off your positive take on Quinshon Judkins?
I still think it's a pretty good matchup against the 49ers. I still don't think that their defense is this super formidable unit because of all the injuries that they've had. Now, that being said, he is banged up. Dylan Sampson got more involved, and he got some positive coach speak per the Coach Speak Index. After the game, they were talking about, we really like Dylan Sampson. Like, we want to get him more involved. So that's always a concern, especially if they run into a situation where if the 49ers are playing in a positive game script, is Judkins on the field catching passes? Probably not. So I think that he does come with a bit of a scarier floor, but I mean, this guy is everything they want to do in the red zone. Like, it's direct snaps to Judkins. We're not throwing the ball. We're just giving the ball to Judkins. He scored 2 rushing touchdowns last week. So I'm trying to capture that. But I do admit, like, seeing him in my tier, it's like Dowdle, Jalen Warren, Harvey, Marks. Like, I feel like I could probably shift him around a little bit and probably bring him down a little bit closer to where the ECR is. Like, Harvey versus Judkins. Like, when I look at it again, it's like, maybe I would actually want Harvey over Judkins because Harvey has more of a 3-down skill set regardless of the game script, where Judkins, again, I was lower on Judkins last week and I was wrong because he ended up scoring 2 rushing touchdowns, but maybe this isn't as favorable as a spot, although the Browns are at home. So I don't know, like, what do you think? I mean, you're lower on Judkins, Fitz, so why is that?
Well, it's hard to rank the guys who are so touchdown dependent. Like last year, I remember trying to rank Nick Westbrook-Ikhine when he was scoring a touchdown every week on like 2 targets. And just like, how can I keep burying this guy in the rankings when he is getting into the end zone every week? So obviously, Judkins a better usage outlook than Nick Westbrook-Ikhine had last year. But still, Judkins has been really touchdown dependent. He had 2 last week. He has 7 touchdowns in 10 games this season, but he's kind of scored them in bunches. He had that 3-touchdown game against the Dolphins in the bad weather in Cleveland like a month ago, and then 2 against the Raiders last week. So, but since week 6, Quinshon Judkins is averaging 3.2 yards per carry and has caught 5 passes for 8 yards. That's the downside we're looking at here. And we know the Browns are not really a very potent offense.
All right, running back threes, or the 25 through 36 is coming up. But first, dominate your fantasy football league with Fantasy Pros Premium. The playoffs are almost here, and guess what? You can get available free 6 months when you deposit and place your first wager on our partner sportsbooks. That is the Fantasy Pros Premium product when you do so, and it can carry you through the playoffs. This is the easiest way to get full access to our fantasy tools all season long and into the off season when you're getting into drafts and everything. So go to fantasypros.com/premium to get started today. Our running backs 25 through 36. It starts with Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Tyrone Tracy, Kenny Gainwell, Kamani Vidal, David Montgomery at 30, Kyle Monanga at 31, Devin Neal, Bashal Tutin, Zach Charbonnet, Chris Rodriguez, and Sean Tucker. How about DeAndre Swift? How about DeAndre Swift versus Monangai? Monangai keeps getting those rushing touchdowns. Swift kind of taken out of the game script. He is ECR 26. Fitzy, you've got him at 26. Erickson, you have buried him at 33. Fitzy, why don't you take the positive run? And I'd love to get your take on him versus Kyle Monangai. FYI, this is a bad matchup against Philly added into all of this.
Yeah, it is a bad matchup for sure. So I've got Swift running back 26 and Monangai running back 33. It's getting hard to get a read on the Bears backfield. One week it seems like Swift is the guy. The next week it seems like it's a split backfield with Swift and Monangai sort of sharing the work. Swift has been a little banged up, but it was still pretty alarming for Swift stakeholders that Monangai outsnapped Swift 35-29 last week, and the Bears win over the Steelers. That was pretty close throughout, so you couldn't chalk it up to game script. Like the Bears weren't sitting on a big lead or anything like that. And now, as you said, Welsh, really tough matchup against the Eagles. And if it's close to a 50-50 backfield split again, me ranking Swift as a high-end RB3 is probably too high. And I'm just betting that it mostly goes back to Swift, or at least Swift in the lead and Monangai sort of in relief. Maybe he's the goal line guy.
Yeah, that's the only problem I think kind of exists with this one. Erickson, you are on the negative, is I feel like there's a lot of like if and buts and candies and nuts, and we'd all have a Merry Christmas type of situation with him, with this situation of Swift versus Monangai. And Monangai is kind of proven to be more of the touchdown equity. You know, if he's going to be more the goal line guy, this is a bad matchup. If I'm going to bet on one of these two, especially after the touches this last week and the goal line, I feel like I would actually have Monangai higher than Swift. But if you think they're going to be playing from behind, Swift is more of a usage in the receiving game, but I'm just kind of spouting out here. Erickson, you got him at 33, so you're really down on Swift. Are you Monangai over Swift in this situation, or don't give me any of them?
I am fade Bears backfield. Don't want either piece of this. We can get by with committee backfields in good matchups. See Steelers facing the Bills. Start Kenneth Gainwell this week. Fade the Bears backfield into oblivion. I cannot trust DeAndre Swift after he fumbled last week because what's going to happen? Ben Johnson gave him 2 carries after he fumbled last week. This is the issue with Swift. He does this every single year. He plays really well for like a 6-week stretch. We're all convinced, all right, DeAndre Swift, he's back, he's catching passes, he looks explosive. And then when the matchups get tougher, he starts fumbling the ball. They use other guys in the red zone, to your point. Who's more likely to score a touchdown? Again, if we pull up the betting pros odds, who has the better odds of scoring a touchdown? It's probably going to be Kyle Monangai. Minus 110. Kyle Monangai to score a touchdown. And DeAndre Swift's probably plus money. Would not make either bet this week because I don't like the matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think that this is a pretty easy fade. That's why I have him outside my top 32 running backs, because it's split work, no volume that you can rely on. Yeah, maybe you can buy into the game script with Swift catching more passes, but I mean, that wasn't the case last week. So again, the game script was a little bit different, but Monangai's also eating into some of Swift's routes. That's been true the last 2 weeks. So look, I have been the number one Swift fader basically all season long, and at times it's looked really, really bad. But down this stretch with the upcoming matchups for the Bears, Swift is going to be a very tough click the rest of the way with this really tough Bears schedule.
You mentioned him, Kenny Gainwell. Kenny Gainwell comes in at 28 on ECR. Fitz, you got him at 27. Erickson, you have him at 24. You said start Kenny Gainwell, so tell us about why we're starting Kenny Gainwell.
See Buffalo Bills run defense that just gets absolutely gashed. I mean, even the Texans, who can't run on anybody. Woody Marks puts up a career high in rushing yards and would have had a much better day if he could just find his way to get into the freaking end zone. But Kenneth Gainwell, look, he has a standalone role alongside Jaylen Warren. Kenneth Gainwell started last week. Now that may have been because Jaylen Warren was coming off of that injury. Again, they're going to both use both guys. And the thing with Kenneth Gainwell is he's the receiving back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And with whether it's Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers, they have no interest in throwing the ball downfield. They're like, where's Kenny G? I want to check it down to my guy. And that just gives him such a high floor, especially in half PPR and full PPR. So he should have scored a touchdown last week had he not got ruled down at like the 1 inch yard line, and Warren ended up scoring the touchdown. So look, man, I liked Kenneth Gainwell a couple of years ago when he was on the Eagles, and I thought he was going to take over the RB1 role, and then he got hurt, and then Swift kind of took the job. But right now it's like rest of the season, give me Kenneth Gainwell over Swift.
I only had the MASH theme in my head, by the way. I don't know what Kenny G actually plays, but that was the trumpet. Kenny Gainwell, for you, Mr. Pat Fitzmaurice, are you as a positive take that he's a must start?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive. Not as bullish as Erickson because I didn't want to go overboard with the Gainwell ranking after he had such a nice day against a Bears defense that was playing without all of its linebackers. But Gainwell has been getting a solid amount of work. Erickson mentioned the dual run catch usage, and he does have another pretty favorable matchup against the Bills this week. So I'm on board. I might have to move him up a bit.
All right, final one that we're going to hit. This was the popular waiver pick. It is Devin Neal. He is ECR 30. You guys are both higher on consensus, 30 and 28. Obviously, Kamara's injury status is up in question. Kind of regardless, Neal looks like he's putting in a good positive spot, but he could be the guy. So, Fitzy, what do you think about Devin Neal for week 13?
So it's interesting with Kamara having the sprained MCL and Kendre Miller out for the year. Devin Neal is basically the only man left standing in the New Orleans backfield. It's probably going to be Broncos cast-off Audric Estime backing up Neal this week. But it is possible the number one running back in New Orleans is Taysom Hill. And Taysom Hill did have a team-high 10 carries for the Saints last week. Devin Neal had 7. So talk about stones in shoes for all the people who go out and spend a bunch of fab money on Devin Neal this week. Taysom Hill is a potential stone in your shoe.
Oh, Erickson heard Taysom Hill and he just got activated. Are you activated into the world of Taysom Hill this week, or are you more leaning into Devin Neal?
Taysom Hill gets people so angry, so I'm prepping myself for a good rant here.
I was on Beyond Tilt because I had the anytime touchdown Taysom Hill bet, and the guy gets like 1,000 opportunities to score. Doesn't find the end zone one time. And I'm like, I get the notification Kamara's out. I'm like, dude, this is the perfect run out. Like, Taysom Hill's going to score. And then he does like everything in his power not to find the end zone. So extremely tilting because now his odds are going to be, again, minus 110. Taysom Hill anytime touchdown. That sucks. Not fun. But we'll get more into that in the tight end show. Devin Neal, I think, yes, it's going to be a dual backfield between Taysom Hill and Neal as in terms of carries. But in terms of targets out of the backfield, Devin Neal, like, he's the guy. So I like that in full PPR, especially if, they're playing on the road at the Dolphins. Miami's defense has been better the last couple weeks. We have seen them giving up some big games to running backs. I wouldn't necessarily bank on that just because the Saints aren't an offense that necessarily takes advantage of, soft matchups. But that being said, if the Saints find themselves trailing, then I think you're going to see a lot of Devin Neal catching passes out of the backfield. Last week, he had 7 targets, I believe. Yeah, 7 targets, 16% target share, 5 catches for 43 yards. He ran over 30 routes. So I like that a lot from a pass catching standpoint. He played 74% of the snaps. So although Taysom Hill, yes, probably going to be a thorn in the side of Devin Neal, especially in the red zone. Hey, maybe we could have our cake and eat it too. Taysom Hill, passing touchdown to Devin Neal. Everyone's happy. That's what I'm betting on.
Cake or pie for this holiday weekend. All right, there you go. That is your Week 13 running back ranks. You guys want more, go to fantasypros.com/rankings. As always, you can check out as the consensus rankers pop in. The rankings will kind of move around all the way until kickoff. You can check that. Make sure you're logged in on everything on the Fantasy Pros app to get you prepped. And just make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube, the Twitch, and the podcast for any of the latest holiday schedules. Make things a little bit wonky here, but make sure you'll get notified if you're following all of those apps for all the content that we have. For Andrew Erickson and Pat Fitzmaurice, I'm Chris Welsh. You guys have a fantastic one, and we will talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros.